Morning breaks with the dull tolling of a plague bell echoing through the dripping corridors of our hive. I awake to its familiar, mournful knell vibrating in the walls. An alarm clock ordained by Grandfather Nurgle himself. A thick blanket of humid rot clings to the air, warm and cloying, seeping through the vents. My first breath of the day draws in the smell of mold and charnel house sweetness, and I wheeze out a wet cough. Phlegm rattles in my chest, a comforting rhythm in an odd way. It means I've survived another night. In this place, even a cough can feel like a victory of sorts, a reminder that I'm still alive to feel the ache. I push myself up from the sagging cot that serves as my bed. The mattress squelches. Sometime in the night, the fungus growing in its stuffing blossomed again, a fresh crop of pale filaments spreading like icy lace over the burlap. I peel a clump off my sleeve. It's damp, but at least it keeps the bed soft. You take your comforts where you can. My joints protest as I stand. My left knee refuses to straighten at first. The joint's swollen with something infection or mutation, hard to tell. But I gingerly rub it until I can hobble on it. Every day it hurts a little differently, and I've learned to interpret those pains like the weather. Today's pain is sharp but localized. I'll manage. Contented resignation. That's become my morning mood. Dim light filters through a crack in the wall, a sickly green glow. It might be dawn outside, but who can tell through the perpetual smog of spores that shrouds our sky? The little light that reaches my hab unit is colored by the stained glass of pollution and warp taint above. I slide aside a crude curtain of burlap. Once it was a fine plastic blind, now long torn away, and peer out through the grime-streaked slit that was a window. The view greets me like a painting of decay, towering hive spires in the distance, their silhouettes softened by a haze of toxic fog. Closer by, the cramped block of habs identical to mine, dripping brown sludge from gutters and overhangs, and stretching between them the narrow pedestrian causeways already teeming with activity. The city is waking. From somewhere far off in the hive's upper reaches, I hear a raucous chorus of raspy voices chanting the morning benediction. Blessed be the Plague Father, for his gifts sustain us. The words echo down the steel canyons of the hive, distorted until they're lost amid the perpetual drone of flies. I know in the grand cathedral, once the governor's spire, now repurposed as a temple of ruin, the faithful are gathered at this early hour, voicing their praise with phlegm-choked enthusiasm. I can't see them from here, of course. My hab is far too low in the mid-hive for a glimpse of that lofty place, but imagination fills in the gaps. I picture rank upon rank of robed supplicants, faces bloated and smiles sincere, swaying as they sing praises to Nurgle. It's a mental image equal parts grotesque and strangely holy. Disturbingly stable, this society of rot. Even morning prayers happen like clockwork. I dress for the day in the same threadbare overalls I wore yesterday and countless days before. They were once blue. Now they're stained to a universal jaundiced brown. A few new splotches catch my eye, a spray of dark green along the cuff, probably algae from yesterday's batch at work, and something that looks like dried blood on the shoulder. Emperor knows whose blood, possibly mine, possibly not. I tug on my boots, caked in mud and something less savory, and retrieve my work gloves from where they hang, drying over a vent. The gloves have patches on patches, crusted with lime from the vats I tend. Still, they protect my hands somewhat from the worst of the rot, and that's enough. Before leaving, I perform my own quiet ritual. In the shadowed corner of my hab, behind a loose panel, I've hidden a small tin. I open it carefully, heart thumping as always despite the dozens of times I've done this. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, is a tiny icon of the Emperor I managed to save. A simple aquila, half the size of my palm, torn from an old Imperial infantryman's prayer book. It's cracked and stained, the two-headed eagle almost worn smooth, but I can still make out the outline. I hold it and shut my eyes for a moment. I dare not whisper sound carries too easily through these thin walls, but in my mind I recite a line from an old prayer. Though I walk in shadow, I shall fear no evil, for the Emperor is my light and salvation. The words bring a pang of memory and a sting of bitter irony to my eyes. Light and salvation feel very far away on this planet forsaken by him. I don't even know if the Emperor can hear a soul in a place so saturated by chaos. But I say the prayer anyway, if only to remind myself I'm still me, that I still serve in my heart. It's a small act of rebellion, performed in utter secrecy. If I were caught with this icon, I shudder and quickly wrap it again, placing it back in its hiding spot. With that, I steel myself for the day. Throne, give me strength, and then I catch my own thought and grimace. Perhaps I should say, Grandfather, give me strength now, at least aloud. I will have to, many times today. I pull open the door of my HAB unit and step out into the corridor. At once the Hive's symphony assaults me, the dripping of water, or something like water, from innumerable leaks, the skittering of vermin in dark corners, the buzzing of fat blowflies that circle every exposed light, and the distant clamor of human voices and machinery. I inhale and get a mouthful of the communal scent, a melange of sweat, rot, and industrial discharge that permeates every cubic meter of air in this city. My nostrils have long become numb to it. It's only when I first step out each morning that I consciously notice. We live in a miasma, but it's our miasma. Several of my neighbors are emerging as well, shuffling out of their identical habs. Gaunt faces, heavy-lidded with fatigue or illness, but still alive, still moving. Some give me a curt nod or a half-hearted wave. Others are already in a pious mood, clasping their hands and muttering praise to Nurgle under their breath as they lock their rusted doors. I return the nods and keep any opinions about the praises to myself. Out here, I play the role expected of me. Just another content citizen of this pestilent paradise. We join the flow of foot traffic heading toward the main thoroughfare. The corridor opens into a larger, arterial passage of the Hive, high-ceilinged but cramped with people. Overhead, I can see the crisscrossing of pipes and cables, many broken or oozing sludge. Fist-sized insects cling to some of them, pale, grub-like things sucking moisture from the leaks. A few drop to the ground as the pipes rattle with distant machinery. One lands with a plop near my feet. Instinctively, I sidestep it and keep moving. No one else bothers to look. Falling grubs are as common as falling dust. We descend a flight of metal stairs where the railing is fuzzy with orange moss. With every step I take, the soles of my boots peel away from tacky threads of growth on the floor. The maintenance servitors used to clean these halls daily back in Imperial times. Those servitors are still around in a fashion, but their priorities have changed. Now they waddle through the streets occasionally, spraying not disinfectant but a fresh coat of spore-laden mist, literally seeding the ground for more corruption. A new directive from the plague priests encouraged the garden to thrive, and so the very corridors sprout life, if one can call it life. As we near the Hive's central concourse, the crowd thickens. I see more people from other habstacks merging in, a motley parade of survivors, all of us carrying the scars and lesions of Nurgle's dominion. It strikes me, as it often does, how stable everything appears on the surface. We shuffle along to our jobs or errands, much like we did in the old days, chattering in low voices, yawning off sleep, scolding our kids to stay close. If you squinted and ignored the details, it could be a normal morning in any hive. But the details won't be ignored. The bloated, tumor-riddled man hawking fried rat skewers by the alley, and the swarm of flies upon them. The clergyman in tattered robes of sickly green at the corner, sprinkling something wet and brown on passers-by as a blessing. The child skipping by with open sores on her bare feet, humming a cheerful rhyme about ring-a-rosies that ends in a coughing fit. I walk on, keeping my expression neutral, perhaps even letting a faint, contented grin settle on my face, the same kind I see mirrored around me. A mask of acceptance. It wouldn't do to appear sullen or unhappy. That could invite questions or suspicions. The cult of Nurgle prizes an upbeat endurance in the face of misery. They like to see that we appreciate grandfather's gifts. So I practice the slight upturn of my mouth, the placid, glassy look in the eyes. Inside, I fortify my true self behind a mental curtain. Let them see a loyal, if unremarkable, drone of their garden. It's safer that way. We reach a large plaza that connects several avenues of the mid-hive. Here, a massive ancient statue stands in the center, or it used to. The statue of some long-forgotten imperial hero was torn down after the fall, and in its place now squats an immense effigy of Nurgle's symbol. A cluster of 3 interlocked circles, like a biohazard trifoil, fashioned crudely from riveted iron and hung with chains. From the chains dangle hundreds of bronze bells of varying sizes. Every time a breeze passes, breezes are rare down here, but the ventilation fans stir the air occasionally, the bells jangle softly, scattering an eerie tinkling over the plaza. This is accompanied by the wet flapping of dozens of giant flies that constantly alight on the structure, attracted by the odor of offerings piled at its base. I avert my eyes from the base where people have left rotting fruits, dead animals, even severed limbs, all gifts to please the Plague Lord. The stench wafting from that heap is eye-watering. A couple of Nurgle's blessed devotees stand guard with incense burners, wafting out clouds of bitter smoke to sanctify the air and slightly mask the smell so we don't all pass out. Skirting the edge of the plaza, I spy what used to be a scrolling hololith news display, now long shattered. In the days of imperial rule, that screen would relay important bulletins, work quotas, uplifting war news, stern reminders from the governor. Now it's just a frame of twisted metal where someone has hung a flayed human skin, a message board of flesh. On it, scrawled in vivid yellow pus, is today's public notice. As I shuffle closer in the crowd, I can make it out. Communal boil lancing at 7th bell. Mandatory attendance for blocks 12-15. Below that, in smaller script, all hail the Fly Lord. Rejoice, for his generosity abounds. I swallow down a rise of bile. Another communal boil lancing. Likely some ritual where those with particularly large boils have them ceremonially punctured to shower the faithful. I've seen one before, it's as disgusting as it sounds. Fortunately, blocks 12-15 are a bit further north than my sector. Not my turn tonight, apparently. I move on, grateful to escape being showered in someone else's pus. At least for today. As I continue along the thoroughfare, the social order of this corrupted society shows itself in subtle ways. Once, I remember, this hive's hierarchy was enforced by armored arbites on street corners, by the noble-born overseers peering down from high balconies, by the uniforms of the administratum officials hurrying to their offices. Now, there's a new hierarchy, visible if you know what to look for. Over there, a tall figure robed in tattered green moves against the flow of pedestrian traffic. People instinctively step aside and bow their heads. The figure's hood is thrown back just enough to reveal a face or what's left of one half fused into a mass of fungal growth, the other half grinning with too many teeth. He carries a staff topped with a tricircle icon. This is a plague priest, one of Nurgle's clergy, likely on his way from one shrine to another to lead more prayers or inspect the sick. He doesn't even need to speak. By the time he passes, all of us have given him a wide berth and a reverent nod. I make sure to do the same, eyes downcast in respect. The priest's one gleaming eye, the one not covered in fungus, scans the crowd, and for an instant, I feel it linger on me. My heart skips. Did I bow deeply enough? I resist the urge to wipe the anxious sweat from my brow. Then he's gone, the crowd closing up behind him as he moves on. I exhale slowly. Survival here means navigating authority carefully. Other subtle markers. I see a cluster of men and women marching in unison down a side street, singing a work chant. They wear similar tunics, marked with a crude fly sigil painted in red across the chest. These would be the cult militia, the Blessed Sons, who act as enforcers and soldiers under the new regime. They aren't as heavily armed as Imperial PDF troopers once were, a mishmash of autoguns, rusted blades, and sidearms. But each has mutations that double as weapons. One has bony protrusions like spikes studding his arms, another's jaw distends impressively, probably able to bite through flesh with ease, and another leaves wet footprints of some caustic substance eating into the floor with each step. They chant a song about the grandfather's love in a surprisingly upbeat melody. I catch a few lyrics about sharing plagues freely and the joy of unity in decay. A sour taste fills my mouth. When those were the Imperial Guard patrolling, they used to sing bawdy drinking songs or battle hymns to the Emperor. Now this. Still, the tune has a dark catchiness to it. I find my treacherous brain humming along before I stop myself. Best not. Above, along the walls of the avenue, the old Imperial Aquila emblems have been defaced. In their place, crude graffiti and meticulously painted runes compete. A favorite seems to be a stylized fly with outspread, filth-smeared wings. Here and there, I see tattered banners hanging from gantries, once the blue and silver of our planetary governor's house. He fancied himself a distant cousin of ultramar nobility, I recall, now overpainted with dripping green bile in the shape of Nurgle's mark. Some banners display the silhouette of a bloated man enthroned, multiple arms outstretched, perhaps a portrayal of Nurgle or one of his greater demons. They flap idly in the sluggish air, shedding dried flakes of rot. The Hive city's colors have changed, where once garish neon signs and manufacturer logos flashed, now organic hues of decay prevail. Fungal growths glow with bioluminescence in some broken sign frames, casting a faint glow of yellow-green. It's quieter, too. The constant machinery grind has lessened except in critical areas. In its place, there's an almost natural ambiance of dripping water and chittering life, disturbingly serene if you forget what you're hearing. As I walk, I pass what used to be a busy administratum office, its grand doors now off their hinges. Inside, instead of clerks hunched over cogitators, I glimpse piles of scrolls and a few hunched shapes moving methodically. The administratum is still at work in its way, just repurposed. I know what they do: tallying the dead, cataloging diseases like assets, writing liturgies to accompany the distribution of new plague strains. A new bureaucracy of decay. They call it the Tally Keeper's Office, referencing Nurgle's obsession with cataloging every plague. I'm sure they're thorough. The scratch of quills and the murmured recitation of symptoms drift out as I pass. This functioning society is as bureaucratic as the old one, just oriented around a different axis. Where the Imperium demanded tithes of grain or ore, The Plague Lords demand quotas of disease and despair. It's rumored, and likely true, that our planet's overlords regularly send frigates laden with plague casks out into the void to trade with other warbands or to infect enemy systems. We don't export wheat or manufactured goods anymore. We export refined pestilence. And in return, what could we possibly need from off-world? Weapons, perhaps, new machines of war for our keepers, or simply the permission to continue eking out our existence. We are part of the Plague God's economy now, and it runs on suffering and contagion. A cynical part of me muses that it's not so different from how the Imperium ran on our sweat and blood. Different currency, same exploitation, if you will. I almost chuckle at the thought, but catch myself. Laughing alone might look odd. Ahead, the avenue narrows and slopes downward toward the manufacturum district where I work. The crowd funnels into a massive archway, known ironically as the Gates of Hope. I recall the day they painted that phrase above the arch in bile green pigment, the word hope, stylized with flies buzzing around it. It was during the festivity of joyous despair, a few months after the occupation, when the new rulers were really leaning into their twisted messaging. Hope in despair, life in death, love in rot, all that. The gates were once military blast doors to seal sectors, now permanently wedged open and adorned to be inviting. 2 sentries stand guard as we pass through, pox-ridden giants in corroded armor. They are former Planetary Defense Force troopers, I think, now heavily mutated, hulking and misshapen. They don't wear helmets anymore. Their faces are too distorted. One has growths like elephantiasis covering his entire head, aside from a single peering eye. The other's jaw hangs unnaturally low, drooling strands of mucus onto his breastplate. But they grip their weapons with a kind of lazy authority. These are the everyday watchmen now. As we shuffle through, they barely give us a glance. We are the dreary regulars, after all, not worth their attention unless we make trouble. I nod respectfully at the one with the eye. He gives a slow, acknowledging blink. Perhaps he remembers me passing daily, perhaps not. Hard to tell with them. Once through the gate, the manufacturum district opens up. This was always a more spacious part of the mid-hive. Large warehouses, factorum buildings, loading yards for cargo transports. None of those vehicles run now. Many have been cannibalized for metal to forge altar shrines or welded into barricades during the takeover. The skyline is jagged with broken cranes and half-collapsed megastructures. Some smoke still rises from a few chimneys. Production hasn't halted entirely. In fact, some factories run at full tilt, though what they produce might differ from before. I see plumes of greasy smoke from what used to be a pharmacarium. Ironically, it's now likely brewing toxins instead of cure-alls. My destination is a squat building near the old water treatment plant, a structure that once purified the Hive's water supply, drawn from underground reservoirs. After Nurgle claimed this world, those reservoirs turned foul and brackish, and people like me turned to recycling every possible source of moisture, growing what edible life we could in the dark. So now the water plant has become the cultivation vats facility, effectively a fungus farm and algae processing center. It provides a significant portion of the slop we call food, as well as base material for some of the plagues the priests concoct. And I, in my small way, tend the rot. Outside the facility, I pause at a public fountain set into the wall. It's an old feature from the days when one could drink the Hive water, filtered, of course. The akala that once capped it has been broken off. Now the spout juts from the mouth of a grinning gargoyle added later, a leering demon face. A trickle of water still flows, not clean water, but an oily, grayish liquid, likely runoff from the treatment process. Still, it's the closest thing to hydration readily available. A few workers are gathered, filling canisters or cupping their hands to drink. I put my face to the spout and take a sip. The lukewarm liquid tastes faintly of rust and salt, with an earthy undertone. Not pleasant, but I've gotten used to it. It doesn't sicken me. Nothing does now. In truth, I can drink almost anything without keeling over. A small benefit of living in Nurgle's realm. Our constitutions are robust, whether we like it or not. If the plague god wants us alive to host his diseases, he's not going to let a little bad water finish us off. I rinse my mouth and spit out the first mouthful, dislodging some phlegm, a courtesy to not swallow it in front of others, though here no one would blink. Then I drink properly, enough to wet my throat and stave off dehydration for a while. Quenching thirst, one of the mundane tasks of survival that remain the same, even if the quality of water has changed. I wipe my lips with the back of my hand and continue inside the facility. The interior hits me with a wall of pungent air, the smell of wet earth, fermentation, and rot all mingled. It's not entirely unpleasant, oddly. There's a sour, yeasty tang to it that sometimes even triggers a grumble of hunger in my belly. My body has adapted to associate that smell with food, because, in a way, it is food. Rows of large open vats stretch out across the factory floor, once chemical processing tanks now converted to fermentation pits. The weak lumens overhead give off a yellowish light, reflected on the glossy, rippling surfaces of slurry within each vat. Workers move between them, stirring, skimming, hauling buckets. "Morning," I mumble to a co-worker as I pass a cluster of them near the entrance, trying to sound appropriately genial. My voice comes out as a rasp. I clear my throat and hawk a glob of something into the gutter along the wall. Better to get that out before I speak more. The group responds with a variety of greetings, a couple of curt nods, one or two blessings of the day to you, and one bright and chipper, "Nurgle's joy be with you this fine morning." I know that last voice, Joss. An older fellow, lean as a skeleton but energetic to an unsettling degree. He's one of the true believers, always grinning through cracked lips, ever eager to share the latest benediction. I force a cheerful tone. "And with you, Joss," I reply. "Another glorious day in the garden, eh?" He beams at my choice of words. Garden. They like calling the Hive that now. "Oh, yes, indeed. Grandfather tends to us all," Joss says, hefting a pole over his shoulder. "We've got a fresh crop in Vat 6 that's looking hearty. You'll see. Nurgle be praised." I nod, feigning enthusiasm. "Can't wait." With that, I head to the locker nook to stow a few personal items. Our lockers are just wire mesh cages. I slip my tin mug inside and a rag I brought for later, then head toward my assigned station. I work mainly on Vats 6 through 9. Each holds thousands of liters of nutrient muck, seeded with algae and various fungal strains. My job is to help the stuff grow and then harvest it at the right time. It's laborious but straightforward. Stirring the mix, adjusting nutrient feeds, which are basically adding measured amounts of waste matter from the city's cesspits, ironically, and skimming off mats of mature growth. I shrug on a heavy rubberized apron, one of the few pieces of protective gear we still maintain. Without it, the acidic slurry would eat through my clothes and skin eventually. Many of us wear aprons in various states of repair. Mine has a burn hole near the hem from a splash last week. I tie it tight, slip on thick gloves, and grab my stirring pole, a long metal shaft with perforations at one end. Vat 6 is indeed hearty looking, as Joss said. A bloom of thick, fibrous algae and mottled mushrooms floats near the surface of the gray-brown soup. I climb a short ladder to the rim and peer in. The entire vat surface undulates slowly, alive with microorganisms. Patches of it glow faintly. Bioluminescent colonies that we especially prize, since their glow tells us the culture is thriving. I plant my feet and begin to stir, shoving the pole in and churning the mixture in a wide circle. This aerates the culture and prevents it from clumping too much. As I work the pole, my thoughts settle into the familiar monotony of labor. There's comfort in having a routine, even one as grotesque as this. In a way, it's not so far removed from stirring giant pots of soup, except our soup is raw biomass. This sludge, once processed and dried, will become the basis of our rations. I recall my first day assigned to this plant, months ago, or has it been years? Time blurs. I was revolted, retching at the sight and smell, at the idea we would eat this. Now I barely register that revulsion. We adapt. Human beings can adapt to almost anything given time. A dark truth the Plague Lord knows and takes full advantage of. A few yards over, I hear laughter, a wet, gargling sort of laughter that could be mistaken for choking. I glance over and see two of my colleagues working at Fot 7. One is Mara, a stout woman with her hair falling out in clumps. She's scooping algae with a strainer. The other is Gerald, a lanky youth whose skin is unfortunately sloughing off in places. He wraps those areas in bandages to keep from contaminating the vats too much. They're both laughing at something. Mara lifts a stringy mass of algae from the vat and pretends it's a luxurious scarf around her neck, batting her eyes comically. Gerald doubles over in a hacking chuckle. "How do I look?" Mara calls out to us nearby, striking a pose with foul green-black slime draped around her shoulders. It's absurd, and bizarrely, moments like this remind me of the old days when workers would joke to break the tedium. Gallows humor thrived even under imperial rule. That hasn't changed, it's just darker now. I find myself smiling, a genuine one this time, and I call back hoarsely, "Ravishing! It's all the rage in the Spire fashion houses." A couple of others within earshot snicker. Mara winks and dumps the algae into a collection bin. As she does, a spray of spore-laden mist puffs out from it, and she sneezes hard. The sneeze devolves into a coughing fit, and she nearly doubles over, bracing herself on the vat's rim. Concerned, I pause stirring. A severe cough can sometimes mean something serious, an onset of a new plague, or a body finally giving out. "You all right, Mara?" I call. She raises a hand, still coughing but nodding. Gerald pats her back. A risky kindness. You never know what you might catch even from friends. But at this point, we likely share everything anyway. After a moment, she hawks and spits a glob of purulence onto the floor, then stands upright, wheezing. "Fine, fine," she manages between breaths. Just a particularly eager spore up my nose." She wipes her mouth, and to my surprise, she starts laughing again, albeit weakly. See, grandfather's reminding me not to waste the yield by playing with it. Gerald chuckles and goes back to skimming. I shake my head and resume stirring Fot 6. Mara's resilience, like that of so many here, still astounds me. By all rights, the woman should be in a medicae ward, convalescing from the slew of illnesses she carries. But of course, there are no medicae wards anymore, and Nurgle's gifts keep her and others like her on their feet. She'll cough till she pukes, then she'll straighten up and get back to work. Perseverance and survival. Ironically, exactly what the Imperium always preached, just in a different tone. I often reflect on this while I work. how the plague god's tyranny in some ways mirrors the Imperium's, yet with an opposite face. The Emperor demanded we toil and sacrifice with stern, unforgiving discipline, promising protection and a distant salvation. Nurgle invites us to toil and suffer with a grotesque smile, promising comfort in the suffering and a bizarre form of immortality. The pressure to produce is still there, but the threat of punishment has shifted. Under the administratum, if our output of algae fell, we'd be docked rations or sent to penal detail. Under the plague cult, if we slack off, perhaps we'll be blessed with a motivating affliction like a nest of flesh-eating worms in our belly to spur us to move faster. Or maybe they'll simply assume we're losing faith and mark us for a poxwalker conversion. Fear remains a motivator, only the method differs. Lost in thought, I keep stirring until the vat's mixture is frothy and uniform. Then I climb down and begin checking a series of pipes and valves along the side. These feed in nutrients from the sump tanks and flush out small portions of the mixture to be dried in the adjacent chamber. I spin a valve wheel. It sticks, crusted with salt deposits. Putting my back into it, I heave until it creaks open, releasing a flow of thick brown slurry down a chute. The machinery here is ancient and poorly maintained now that tech priests have been replaced with a few oily-fingered cult technicians. But they do enough to keep things going, patching with spit, often literally, and a prayer to Nurgle rather than the Omniseer. Our one remaining Mechanicus tech, Enginseer Halst, now calling himself Halst, the Flesh Mender, has embraced the new reality in full. He wanders through occasionally to whisper litanies of decay to the engines. I haven't seen him yet today, but I expect his clanking form to appear sooner or later. A once red-robed cyborg, now coated in moss and human skin scraps, servo arms replaced or augmented by tentacles. He claims the machine spirits appreciate the freedom to rust and rot that he gives them. I suspect the only reason anything still functions is because Nurgle's warp energies perversely animate even broken systems. As I'm musings on that, a sudden blaring horn makes me jump. A deep, brazen note echoes through the factory floor, followed by a second and third in slow succession. I recognize the pattern. It's the work shift call for midday pause. In the Imperium, this would have been a shrill whistle or a klaxon precisely at 4 or 6 hours into the shift. Here, the timing is more flexible, as if no one's overly concerned with punctuality. Today it seems to come a bit early, but I won't complain. I set aside my stirring pole, wipe algae from my gloves, and head toward the center of the facility where lunch is usually distributed. There's a clearing with some benches, scrap planks laid over rusted pipes. Already a line is forming at a repurposed promethium drum that serves as a soup cauldron. 2 workers ladle out the contents to each person, filling bowls and cups. The smell wafting from that drum is actually a tad appealing. It means nourishment. Our meals are seldom pleasant, but always necessary. My stomach contracts, reminding me I'm hungry. I shuffle into the queue. Ahead of me, an older man's knees buckle slightly as he waits, and his neighbor has to catch him. The old fellow mumbles thanks, rubbing at a bandage on his neck. People are tired, yet there's also a low chatter in the line, bits of conversation like any normal workplace lunchtime. I overhear fragments. Spread to her other arm now, but she's proud as a grox. No, I haven't had a good vomit in days. I think I'm adapting to this one. And so on. Casual talk of symptoms and illnesses, the way people once might gossip about the weather or complain about a boss. It's nearly my turn. I take out my dented tin bowl from under my apron. It used to be shiny metal once upon a time. Now a patina of tarnish coats it that I can't scrub away. One of the servers ladling the soup notices me and gives a friendly nod. Her name escapes me. We're not close, but she recognizes faces. She has an impressive goiter on her left cheek that jiggles as she moves. "Eat up, love," she says warmly as she pours a thick, porridge-like gruel into my bowl. I thank her quietly. Today's ration looks like the usual, a paste made from our very own cultivated algae, mixed likely with something for protein. Occasionally it's grox or corpse starch from processing deceased. In the early days, we still had stores of corpse starch ration bars. Those ran out long ago, but nobody minds much now that we have alternative nutrition. I sit on an empty spot along a bench. The gruel is a mottled greenish-brown, dotted with white lumps, possibly mushroom chunks or some kind of insect egg, best not to ask. It's lukewarm, which is better than cold. I stir it with my finger a bit to mix in a bit of thin oil that's pooled on top. Then I begin to eat, scooping with my fingers since spoons are a luxury and my bowl's rim is too battered to sip neatly. The taste, well, it's not great, but not the worst. Blandly fungal with a coppery aftertaste. I've certainly eaten worse in my life. I remember a time we were under strict rationing during an off-world war, and I had to boil my leather belt for sustenance. Compared to that, this is a treat. Across from me, on another bench, Joss, the chipper one, is leading a short mealtime prayer. I can see him with head bowed, steam from his bowl fogging his eyeglasses. Yes, he still wears a pair of ancient glasses. Oddly free of grime, he keeps them immaculate. He's murmuring thanks to Nurgle for the meal, extolling how every morsel strengthens us to better praise the Plague Lord. A few around him echo, "Praise Nurgle," before digging in. Most of us, though, just focus on eating in silence or quiet conversation. Lunch breaks aren't very long, though if one needed more time, likely no overseer would punish them unless quotas were in danger. The idea of a strict schedule has eroded somewhat. When the warp storms made day and night questionable concepts, the concept of timekeeping got fuzzy. These days, we roughly follow a 24-hour cycle out of habit. But if someone needs to pause to puke or to pray, it's generally allowed. I munch on, half listening to murmurs around. Someone behind me says, "Heard the filth crawlers are back in the lower sump. They caught 3 last night." Another replies, "3? Emperor's tears. Those will make a fine stew." They both laugh. Filth crawlers, I think they refer to mutant vermin, big as hounds, that breed down in the sump tunnels. Occasionally, hunting parties go down and catch them for meat. It's nasty, but protein is protein. Hearing the casual invocation of Emperor's tears in that fellow's speech pricks my ears. Many here still swear or speak by the Emperor out of habit, though it's technically forbidden. If a zealot overheard, he might chastise them for it, but generally low speech is not policed too harshly, unless it's overt heresy against Nurgle. After all, many of us were imperial citizens for generations. Old habits don't die overnight. The cult's aim was to transform us gradually, and for the most part they've succeeded, but scraps of the past remain, woven into daily life in ways even the New Order doesn't fully stamp out. I remember how under the Imperium, during lunch, we might grouse about supervisors or gripe about the ration quality, never within earshot of an officer. Now, ironically, we have more freedom to grouse as long as it's not rebellion. With no central omnipresent authority of the administratum breathing down our neck, daily work life has a strange sense of laissez-faire. Of course, if you push the wrong boundary, like openly defying a plague priest's command or criticizing Nurgle's generosity, the consequences are unspeakable. But if you just slack a little or mutter a mild complaint, usually no one cares. The attitude is strangely laid back amid horror. It's as if the whole hive took a collective sigh after the initial apocalypse and said, "Well, we're all damned and rotting, might as well relax a bit." I finish my bowl using a crust of some kind of baked fungus bread to wipe the last of the goo from the edges. Wastage is a sin now, even more than before. Gotta feed all our little internal parasites, I think, with dark humor. I know I have worms in me. Sometimes I feel them squirm when I'm very hungry. But those worms are also Nurgle's creatures, part of my microecology, as one cult scholar put it. We truly are walking ecosystems of plague these days. Meal done, I lick my fingers and remain seated a moment, letting the sustenance settle. My gaze drifts around the room, taking in the other laborers. Some look marginally better than others, a few younger folks with minor rashes and only a couple of boils here and there. Others are in advanced states of decay but still plugging along. That woman by the pillar, I think she's actually been dead for a week, kept animated only by her infection. I see the telltale blackened eyes and the way she moves mechanically, possibly a proto-poxwalker state. Yet, she's loading crates like the rest of us. Nobody minds. Death is a spectrum here, not a binary. You can be 50% dead and still a valued worker. Suddenly, a disturbance, a clatter of metal pans falling, followed by raised voices near the soup drum. I turn to look. It seems one of the servers collapsed. He's on the ground, convulsing, limbs jerking sporadically. A small crowd forms, some back away, understandably cautious. Others lean in to help. I catch a glimpse of the man's face. It's contorted in pain, and dark blood is oozing from his mouth and ears. He might be having a seizure or something more dire. A few spectators begin muttering, and I hear one say, "Could be the red flux," referencing one of the newer plagues making rounds. Red flux is known to cause sudden hemorrhaging fits. Almost immediately, a commanding voice rings out over the murmur, "Back away, give him space." Through the parting ring of onlookers strides Supervisor Dragor, a mid-level cult officer who oversees multiple work sites, including this one. He's a tall, gaunt man, or was once, now swollen at the belly with an outgrowth that might be a demonic familiar partially fused to him. He wears a patchwork uniform, part faded mechanicium jumpsuit, part plague-bearer hide cloak. His authoritative tone contrasts with the relative informality we had moments before. We all fall a bit silent when he asserts himself. Dragor kneels by the fallen worker. The man on the floor has stopped convulsing and lies alarmingly still now. Dragor presses two clawed fingertips to the man's neck, feeling for a pulse, presumably, and then shakes his head. In a booming yet oddly gentle voice, he pronounces, "Our brother has been chosen to advance on Grandfather Nurgle's path. Rejoice, for he will rise anew in the garden." A hush falls. We've heard words like this plenty of times. It's their way of saying someone's died from a plague and will likely turn into a poxwalker or a demon soon. The onlookers bow their heads in respect or feigned joy. I make sure to do the same, hiding my personal sorrow. The man's name was Kell, I recall now. He'd worked the cauldron for months. A quiet fellow, another one gone. Supervisor Dragor motions to two nearby militiamen. They had been on lunch too, leaning against a wall with their gear. "Take him to the lower sanctum," Dragor orders. They move forward to lift the body. In doing so, one of them accidentally knocks Kell's cap off, and a tuft of hair and scalp comes with it, stuck to the inside of the cap. His head beneath is slimy and half-bald, skull showing. Some in the crowd gasp quietly. One of the militia men chuckles under his breath, as if this is darkly amusing. Within half a minute, Kell's corpse is being carried off, leaving only a smear of gore on the floor. Dragor stands and surveys us. His eyes are strangely bright, almost fevered, but his smile is benign. Worry not, friends. Keep up your good work. Brother Kel's passing is a sign of Grandfather's grace, a reminder of our place in the cycle. He will nourish new life. Dragor dips his fingers in the puddle of blood left behind and casually flicks a few drops at the nearest bystanders. A benediction, he intones. I duck slightly, not in the path, thankfully. A drop lands on Mara's apron. She touches it reverently, as if honored. Praise Nurgle, a few people murmur dutifully. Dragor leaves with that, seemingly satisfied that order is maintained. He and the others carry the body out through a side door, likely heading to the lower sanctum, which I know is slang for the corpse pits beneath the factory. From there, depending on how the body reacts, Kel will either be composted into fertilizer for our vats, or, if Nurgle wills it, rise as another poxwalker, or even, rarest of all, contribute to the birth of a lesser demon. The priests would celebrate that. I shiver and push the thought away. Lunch is effectively over with that event. People disperse to get back to stations, a bit more subdued. I return to Vat 6 with a heavier heart. I liked Kel. Secretly, I say a quick, silent wish. Emperor, guide your soul, Kel, far from this hellish fate. It's reflexive, even though I know any soul claimed by Nurgle is likely beyond the Emperor's reach now. Still, it makes me feel a sliver better. Back to work. I climb the ladder again to check the vat's consistency after the break. Hours pass as I fall into the routine, stir this, add that, scrape off mats of growth and haul them to drying racks. The labor exhausts my ailing body, but it's a familiar exhaustion. My mind wanders as my arms move automatically. At one point in the mid-afternoon, I notice that my vision is swimming more than usual. A wave of lightheadedness hits me. I pause, leaning on the rim of the vat, breathing deeply. Through the blur, I see little specks dancing. No, those are just the gnats and midges that live around the vats. I close my eyes for a moment. Steady now. Perhaps I stood too quickly, or perhaps the lunch didn't sit right. I know a dozen minor maladies run through me at any given time, flaring and subsiding. It could be a fever coming on. I reach into my pocket and fish out a small vial. It's something I concocted myself. A bitter herbal tincture from fungus extracts, ironically taught to me by one of the cult medici. It doesn't cure anything, they'd never allow that, but it helps keep my head clear of dizziness. I uncork it and take a swallow. It burns going down, but my vision sharpens again gradually. Crisis averted for now. I can't afford to faint on the job. Aside from the obvious dangers, it would draw unwanted attention. And, altruistically or not, I don't want to burden my co-workers. Back at it I go. Time flows strangely down here. There are no windows to mark the lowering of a sun. But by the ache in my back and the number of times I've stirred each vat, I figure the workday is nearing its end. And sure enough, eventually a second horn sounds, the official end of our shift, a day's labor in the garden done. The horn's echoes fade, and a fatigue mixed with relief settles on all of us. We begin cleaning up, rakes and poles put aside, harvest bins covered. One of the tasks is to scatter a layer of fresh offal into the vats now that cultivation is done for the day, giving the organisms something to feed on overnight. Gerald is dumping buckets of what looks like ground entrails and bone fragments into Vat 8, humming an off-key hymn as he does. I cover Vat 6 with a mesh lid to keep larger pests out of it. As we wash tools and hang up aprons, conversation picks up again, this time mostly about what lies ahead in the evening. Many will attend whatever communal activity or ritual is planned, or just go home to rest. I overhear a few making plans. You going to the Lancing at 7th Bell? No, not tonight. My block isn't required. I might just sleep. I'm gonna stop by the small shrine on Maggot Square first. Hear the dusk chanting. They say Sister Letha is speaking. She's always inspiring. And so on. I personally have no intention of attending anything not absolutely mandatory. My plan, go home, endure whatever I must, and maybe have a moment's peace. But I know I'll likely have to show my face at the local shrine for the evening muster. It's customary. Skipping it draws questions unless one is too sick to stand. And if you're too sick to stand, the plague bearers might drag you off. I trade a few words with Joss as we depart. He's still chipper, despite a hacking cough that racks him every few minutes. Tomorrow's a high day, he reminds me, eyes gleaming. The festival of the 3 Sevens. Ah, yes, I recall something about that. Nurgle's sacred number being 7, they often have a festival every 7th week or something, thrice blessed or whatever numerical superstition. Of course, looking forward to it, I lie smoothly. Festivals mean more work usually, in preparation and cleanup, plus gaudy displays of piety, but I'll endure. Joss pats my arm in a friendly way. His gloved hand leaves a faint slime smear on my sleeve, but that's par for the course. Rest well tonight, brother. May your dreams be filled with grandfather's wisdom. And yours as well, I reply politely. Hopefully not. Last time I dreamt of Nurgle's garden, I woke up screaming internally. We part ways outside the factory. The shift change floods the streets with weary workers from various plants. The daily rhythm, flows of bodies moving homeward in the twilight hours. Twilight. I use that term loosely. There's a vague dimming of the ever-present sickly light, meaning the Hive's lumen circuits are cycling to night mode, and perhaps outside the sun is going down through the polluted clouds. A cooler breeze, if you can call it that, wafts through the avenues, carrying with it the pungent medley of evening smells, cooking fires, sweat, and the omnipresent rot. I navigate through the crowd, keeping my head down but ears open. This time of day, people are a bit more relaxed and chatty. I pass by a makeshift market that's popped up along one street of the Hab Quarter. Vendors lay out cloths on the ground to display goods, mutated fruits, some still wriggling with worms, scraps of somewhat clean fabric, homemade brews in repurposed bottles. One stall even has what looks like books, probably the ravings of some cult scribe copied by hand, or perhaps even old imperial texts that survived, being sold for kindling or toilet paper or secret reading. A cluster of people gather around a fellow stirring a pot of something aromatic, maybe spiced meat broth made from those sump vermin. The line isn't too long. If I had currency or something to barter, and an appetite, I might indulge, as it smells much better than our canteen gruel. But I carry nothing of value on me, and I'm frankly too tired to divert. I weave around a stumbling poxwalker that has somehow wandered up here. Its presence causes mild annoyance, but not panic. The creature, once a human, now a plague zombie with mottled skin and vacant glowing eyes, shambles aimlessly. A few people prod it with sticks to keep it moving out of the way. It moans quietly, maybe sensing the warmth of the crowd, but too far gone to actively attack unless someone got within arm's reach. The accepted tactic is just to avoid and usher it like a stray animal. Eventually, it lurches down an alley, chasing some sound none of us can hear. We all give it a wide berth. One mother shields her little girl's eyes as it passes. I catch a snippet of her words, whispering, "That's why we say our prayers and take our medicine, so we don't end up like that poor soul." The child nods solemnly. The scene is almost domestic, a mother protecting her child from something dreadful while imparting a moral. Life and parenting, twisted but recognizable, continue under Nurgle's rule. The presence of a lone poxwalker up here indicates the hazards of our society's stability. Poxwalkers are mostly corralled in the underhive or used in controlled ways, but one or two always slip through. They're like living reminders of what happens if you give in completely to despair or to infection unchecked. Some say that if you lose hope entirely, Nurgle's curse can claim your mind fully and turn you. Perhaps that's true, I can believe it. Giving up is death here, literal death of the self. After about half an hour of walking, with a slight limp due to my knee stiffening again, I reach the Hab block complex where I live. The block is essentially a massive stack of apartments built into a hexagonal grid around a central courtyard that spans many levels. I enter through an archway that used to have a security gate. Now it stands perpetually open, the gate itself torn off and melted down for scrap long ago. Immediately, I hear the sounds of my neighbors and fellow residents echoing from the courtyard. Babies crying, arguments, laughter, coughs. Lots of coughs. And somewhere a scratchy phonograph playing a discordant tune. An old imperial marching song, ironically, repurposed with different lyrics about Father Nurgle's blessings. I recall hearing it before. I decide to cut through the courtyard before heading up to my unit. The central space is an open area under the Hive's cavernous ceiling, crisscrossed by pipes and laundry lines. It's become a kind of communal living room for the block. A few small fire pits are burning rubbish for warmth and cooking. Around one such fire, a group of children kick around a misshapen ball. Actually, it looks like a sewn-together bundle of rags, maybe stuffed with straw. They are laughing and playing, oblivious to the overall gloom. I slow my pace to avoid running through their game. One boy, a snot-nosed lad of perhaps 7 or 8, nearly collides with me as he chases the ball. "Easy there," I say, putting a hand on his shoulder to steady him. He looks up at me with wide eyes that gleam golden in the firelight. I notice one of those eyes has a milky film. Probably half-blind, poor kid, but he grins at me. "Sorry, sir," he chirps, then dashes off again. I watch him join the fray, yelling happily. Children, if anything hurts my heart, it's seeing them here, growing up thinking this is normal and all that ever is. Nearby, on a bench that once might have been part of an imperial shrine, it has a bas-relief of an aquila on the side, defaced. A couple of old folks sit wrapped in tattered blankets. They appear to be quietly praying or perhaps just resting. One is rocking slightly back and forth. I wonder if they recall the past better than most. They survived the conversion of this world after all. Their faces are so lined and pustule-marked that it's impossible to guess age. Could be 60, could be 160 given the unnatural longevity some followers get. Crossing the courtyard, I nod to a neighbor of mine, Elian, who is out on the ground level stirring a pot of something over a fire. She's a middle-aged woman, missing an arm from some long-ago injury, even pre-chaos, I think. She's one of the fortunate ones whose ailments are largely physical. Aside from a perpetual rash on her skin, she's in decent shape. She lives a couple doors down from me and has occasionally offered spare food or helped mend my clothes. A rare, kind soul in this pit. In return, I've helped her with heavy lifting from time to time. She's not a zealot. She keeps her head down like me. Maybe that's why we get along in unspoken understanding. "Evening, Elian," I greet as I approach. She glances up from her pot and smiles a crooked smile. "Evening. How was the shift?" "Oh, the usual. Lost one today. I don't specify who, as there's no need. Death is common, though I see a flicker of sadness in her eyes. She probably wonders if it was someone she knew. Ah, grandfather's calling." Her tone is carefully neutral, a common phrase that could be taken as reverent acceptance or just a euphemism. "I'm sorry." I nod, crouching a moment by her fire to warm my hands. They're stiff and cold from the vat work now that the damp chill of night settles in. "What's cooking?" I ask lightly, sniffing the air. I can smell a fatty aroma with a hint of rot, likely bone broth from something. Elian pokes at her stew. Some bits of crawler I got in trade. Adding in fungus and a few herbs. It should be ready soon. You're welcome to a bowl if you want. My stomach is still full enough, but it's polite to accept a little if offered. Maybe a small bowl, I say. If it's no trouble. She chuckles softly. No trouble, better eaten than left to spoil. It'll put hair on your chest. The phrase is almost comical now, considering many of us have unusual hair growth due to diseases anyway. I fetch a small tin cup from a communal stack and she ladles some of the broth in. The liquid is dark and greasy, with a film on top. A few indeterminate chunks bob in it. I sip carefully. It's scalding hot and extremely salty but savory. I feel the warmth spread in my belly. Thank you. We share a quiet moment by the fire. Around us, others are winding down or gearing up for the night's devotions. I see, across the yard, a group of zealots assembling. They wear ceremonial garb, such as hooded cloaks adorned with stitched-on plague-bearer faces and rusted icons. They're likely heading out to join a larger procession somewhere. Good riddance. I'd rather they practice their fervor away from our block for the night. With them gone, the block will be left mostly to the less fervent, like Elian and me, who just do the minimum. How's your leg? Elian asks quietly, gesturing to my stiff knee with her spoon, as she knows it bothers me. I roll my shoulder in a half shrug. Not worse, not better. Still got that damned boil in the joint. I can walk. I don't mention how I sometimes worry the infection might seize the bone one day. She nods. If you need another compress, I have some mold left, the one that numbs pain. Thanks. I might take you up on that later. It's small human exchanges like this, neighbors helping each other, that persist even now. Under Imperial rule, we had community too. Maybe it was more fearful and everyone was overworked. But even then, people helped one another in little ways. That hasn't died. In fact, in some ways, the necessity to survive under these conditions has made community bonds even stranger and, at times, stronger. We share everything, including our illnesses. It fosters a grim camaraderie. After finishing the broth, I thank Elian and stand. She reminds me quietly, "Shrine bell in a few minutes." I nod. I'll be there. Sighing internally, I part ways and climb the stairs toward the shrine level. By local custom, each hab block has a small shrine in what used to be perhaps an emperor-fearing chapel or a communal hall. Now it's repurposed for nightly congregation. Attendance isn't strictly compulsory, but absence is noted. The plague priests taught that gathering each evening to show devotion keeps Nurgle's gifts flowing and prevents the worst outbursts of disease, a convenient bit of spiritual blackmail that most folks heed. And there's also the truth that being seen at the shrine means you're a loyal citizen. I can't afford not to be seen. I reach my floor and slip into my own unit briefly to drop off my work gear and fetch a slightly cleaner shirt for the shrine. Appearances. My hab is tiny, one room, so it doesn't take long to find the crumpled cloth that passes for my good tunic. Basically, one less stained with algae and more stained with smoke instead. Better than nothing. I also take the moment to check that my Emperor icon is still safe where I left it. It is. That comfort steadied, I step out and join others funneling toward the shrine at the end of the hall. The shrine occupies what used to be a modest chapel for the Imperial cult, I believe. It's been thoroughly transformed. The aquila above the door has been chiseled off, replaced by a crude relief of Nurgle symbol carved directly into the rock crete. Inside, the pews have been removed. We stand or kneel on the slimy floor now, and the altar has been replaced by a large cauldron embedded in a dais. The cauldron is a prominent feature of Nurgle worship, representing his fecund brew of life and decay. This one is always kept bubbling with a mixture of sacred filth. Every day, attendants toss in samples of the day's rot pus, blood, clippings, even severed diseased limbs, all offerings to the Plague Lord. The concoction seethes with unnatural life, occasionally popping with a burst of spores or a little elemental demon swirling in the foam. It stinks, but it's holy stink. I quietly take my place among the gathering crowd. Perhaps 50 or 60 of us cram into the shrine hall this evening. Dim green candles made from tallow and emperor knows what cast an uneven light that makes the peeling murals on the walls dance. Those murals once depicted saints or imperial victories. Now they've been defaced and overpainted with scenes of Nurgle's garden flowering plague trees, imps cavorting in rivers of bile, human figures smiling as they melt into the ground. Crude art, but effective propaganda. At the front, Sister Maritha presides. She was once a lay preacher of the Imperial Creed here, and when the change came, she converted, or was corrupted, early and wholeheartedly. Now she is our block's plague cult guide. A stooped woman with wild white hair and a face half consumed by a massive ulcer, she cuts an unsettling figure, but her voice, oh, her voice is as soothing as a kindly grandmother's. That's her gift, to make all this seem comforting. As she speaks, her tone is warm, almost loving. "Children of Nurgle," she begins, spreading her arms. We're all children to them, as Nurgle is father or grandfather to all, regardless of age. "Welcome. Come, gather close. Do not fear the touch of your neighbor. We are one in the Plague Lord's embrace." We shuffle in a bit tighter. I feel someone's crusty sleeve brush mine. On my other side, a damp cough sprays my arm with fine droplets. I suppress the instinct to flinch. Instead, I join the others in responding, "All praise to Grandfather, who gathers us in." Maritha smiles beatifically. Her one good eye glints in the candlelight. The other is covered by a boil that has swollen over it. "How have you all fared this day? Have you felt his blessings upon you?" A ragged chorus responds with phrases. "Yes, sister, we have." "His gifts are plentiful." One man proudly raises his arm to show a bandaged hand. "I took ill in the morning, but by noon I felt no pain. Truly, his hand was on me." Another chimed in. "My little one survived her fever last night. Grandfather gave her strength." These testimonials are common in our nightly gatherings. People share how they suffered and yet endured, and give credit to Nurgle's grace. It reinforces communal acceptance of misery. I usually just nod along, not volunteering anything. If pressed, I'd say something generic like, "My cough troubled me, but I carried on," praise Nurgle. But usually it's not required to speak individually unless you want to. Sister Maritha continues with a gentle homily. As I listen, I can't help but note how she masterfully twists concepts that once belonged to the Imperial faith into Nurgle's context. She speaks of how we must care for each other, share our strength and our sickness freely, as that brings us closer together. How hope can be found in surrender, surrendering our fear, embracing our fates. She reminds everyone that no one here is alone. No one is abandoned as long as they trust in the Plague God's plan. "Look at how our community thrives despite all that assails us," she croons. "What power sustains us? Is it not love? Grandfather Nurgle's love. Yes, love in the most honest form, unconditional, accepting even the worst of us." She gestures at a figure near her. I hadn't noticed at first, but there's a large shape lurking behind the cauldron. As it moves into the light, I suppress a shudder. It's one of the blessed poxwalkers, a fancy term they use during rituals, as opposed to plague zombie. This one is particularly gruesome. Its eyes have rotted away, and in their place writhes a cluster of maggots. Its limbs are swollen and blackened, fingernails grown into claws. It stands unnaturally still, like a dormant puppet. "This brother here," Maritha says, placing a hand on the creature's oozing arm without fear. "Even in undeath, he is loved. He continues to serve by exemplifying Grandfather's greatest gift, freedom from worry, freedom from pain, life eternal in decay. He is our kin, and we cherish him." I see a few people nodding reverently. Some even tear up at the sister's kindness towards the monster. For me, the sight is terrifying, a reminder of what any of us could become. But I bow my head to hide my revulsion and pretend to share the sentiment. "Thus," Maratha concludes, "we accept all that is given to us. We thank Grandfather for the trials and the boons alike." She then leads us in a call and response prayer that we all have memorized. She chants, "Though our flesh rots, our spirit is renewed," we respond. "When despair whispers, Grandfather comforts. In sickness and in health, we are one in decay." It goes on a bit more, each line praising endurance, community, and the beauty of decay. The dry sarcasm in me notes it's almost like a twisted wedding vow or something. They've essentially married us to plague. After prayer comes the blessing ritual. 2 attendants, youths who've devoted themselves, 1 teenage girl with open sores on her scalp, and 1 boy with a permanent grin carved by a Glasgow smile-like lesion, remove the heavy lid from the cauldron. A foul steam wafts out. Even the devout step back a half step as the wave of odor hits. It smells of putrefaction and spice, like a curry made from roadkill left in the sun. Sister Maritha picks up a large ladle and stirs the thick broth inside. It clinks against bones or other solid bits. She then fills a small chalice with the cauldron's contents, an ugly brown sludge wriggling with microbial life. One by one, we are expected to step forward and partake. Some just touch it to an area of their body that hurts, an aching head or swollen belly, to anoint themselves. Others actually sip the vile stuff, if they are particularly pious or seeking extra favor. I have always opted for the former. Tasting it is thankfully not strictly required for laypeople, just anointing. As my turn nears in the line, my stomach knots with dread and disgust like it always does. I keep a placid smile on my face, though. The woman ahead of me is weeping as she approaches Maritha. Tears of joy or mania, I can't say. She cries out softly, "Thank you, Grandfather, for choosing me." And she rolls up her sleeve to show a gangrenous wound on her arm, which she clearly intends to dip in the cauldron for healing corruption with more corruption. Maritha nods kindly and allows it, even helps hold her arm steady as it submerges for a moment. The woman gasps in ecstasy or pain or both. When she withdraws, chunks of something cling to the rotted flesh. She steps aside, trembling but smiling through her tears. Now, me. I step up onto the dais. The heat from the cauldron is like a physical force, and the smell is overpowering here. Sister Maritha knows me by name. "Brother Callan," she greets, a common name I gave them. I don't use my real name much anymore. "Receive the Grandfather's blessing." I nod respectfully. "With gratitude," I say softly. I extend my hands. Usually, I just let her dab some on my palms or forehead. She seems to regard me thoughtfully this time. I worry, am I looking insincere? But her half-gone face reveals nothing amiss. Using a smaller spoon, she drizzles a bit of the putrid mixture across my hands. It's hot and gritty, flecked with, I don't want to know. Immediately, I feel an itch and a sting, already alive with bacteria, likely invading tiny cuts in my skin. I grit my teeth in a simulacrum of a blissful smile and rub my hands together, spreading the filth as if washing in it. "Grandfather's grace is mine," I say, the expected response. Maritha gently pats the back of my hand, a quick gesture, but in doing so, she smears a bit more of the stuff onto my wrist. Some of it gets on my sleeve too, sopping into the cloth. I swallow hard. That'll be wonderful to sleep with later. But I incline my head in thanks and move on. After everyone has been blessed, Sister Maritha leads one more round of chanting, a closing praise. And then we're done. The whole affair is maybe 15 minutes of prayer and ritual, short but potent. Short is good. Any longer, and I fear my facade might slip. We disperse from the shrine. Night's quiet has fully settled on the block. People murmur as they leave, but soon it will be silent save the ambient noises of the hive. I immediately head to my hab to wipe off the gunk from my hands before it spawns something. Not that I can fully avoid infection from it. I likely already got some new bug from that contact, but at least I can avoid surface discomfort. I have an old rag I use for such cleaning. Inside my unit, I light a small candle stub. Its feeble glow illuminates the single room. A cot, a bucket for necessities, a shelf with a couple chipped mugs, and a water jug, and some odds and ends I've collected. A faded El-Ho stick poster on one wall. I keep it because it reminds me of a more normal vice than this hell. On another wall, a crudely painted symbol of Nurgle that was there when I moved in. I haven't scraped it off out of fear someone might question why. It stares at me now, 3 circles in a fly shape, mocking. I sigh and ignore it. I wet a cloth with water from my jug and wipe my hands and arms vigorously. The cloth comes away brownish and foul-smelling, but at least I get most of the chunky bits off my skin. There's a bit of red rash where it touched, my flesh reacting to the cauldron's potency. It'll probably turn into a new sore by morning. Add it to the collection. Finally, I sit on my cot and allow myself to exhale fully. It's over. The work, the forced piety, at least until tomorrow begins the cycle anew. This is my small window of solitude. My knee throbs fiercely from the day's labor and all the walking. I take the cloth I used, fold it, and press it against the inflamed joint. Not much relief, but better than nothing. In the dimness, the only sounds are my own breathing and the distant drip of water outside my door. This is usually when my mind wanders dangerously to thoughts I suppress in daylight, the memories of what life was before, and the hopeless calculations about the future. I lean back against the cold wall, legs outstretched on the cot, and let it come. I remember being a child in this very hive, or perhaps another city on this planet. We moved a lot when I was young. I remember an imperial celebration day, the anniversary of some battle, I think. The governors put on a parade, we children waved little flags with the Aquila, and the local PDF marched. There was sickness then, too. I recall coughing even as I cheered the soldiers. But nothing like now. The hive was polluted, yes. Life was hard, yes. But it was a normal kind of hardship. The kind where you curse the tax collectors, complain about the next hive over getting better factory quotas, scrounge for creds to buy a treat now and then. We had loves, rivalries, personal dreams. We feared many things: crime, the arbiters, our superiors, far-off war conscriptions. But we didn't fear that reality itself would twist into a nightmare overnight. Then came the invasion, if one can call it that. It wasn't like orcs storming the gates or tyrannids blotting out the sky. It was insidious, slow, a whisper of a new cult promising relief, a shipment of grain that brought a toxin, a series of plagues weakening us and causing panic. The authorities were overwhelmed. I was maybe in my early 20s. The worst time of my life, that transition. I saw neighbors tear each other apart over a loaf of bread. I saw the enforcers gun down infected protesters in the square. Then came the Death Guard. By the time they arrived, the planet was already half broken by disease and riots. The sky tore open. I remember the warp rift, a sickly green aurora across the heavens. And from it, the plague marines descended like carrion crows to a feast. There wasn't much organized resistance left by then. Our PDF soldiers either died, fled, or, more often, joined the damn cult themselves in hope of a cure. The governor and his family were publicly executed, or worse. Perhaps what I glimpsed on the palace gates was them, but changed beyond recognition. The emperor's statues were toppled, the cathedrals defiled. It all happened in a blur, though it felt like an eternity living through it. I remember fear like I've never known during those days. Every morning, waking up expecting death or damnation, not sure which was worse. In a way, now that things have stabilized, that acute fear has dulled, replaced by a chronic ache of the soul. I know what each day will roughly bring, and I know I'll probably survive it. Fear has become more subtle, fear of being discovered as disloyal, fear of losing myself slowly rather than violently. I run a hand over my face. The skin there feels rough, a couple of warts and blemishes, an uneven patch of scaly dermis on my chin. I trace it idly. Under the Imperium, if I had a skin disease, I could try to see a Midday, or at least afford a salve from the market. Now, if I sought treatment, they'd laugh. "Why hide your blessing?" they'd say. So I let it be. I used to be, believe it or not, a rather healthy young man. I even served a short stint in the planetary militia as required by our Hive's tithe. I was proud at the time to defend my home. That seems a lifetime ago. It was. Now my body is a wreck. Scars from pox, patches of discoloration, a dozen chronic ailments, and I'm one of the better off ones. That fact is not lost on me. It could be so much worse. I could be like the faceless ones who exist only as living incubators strapped to life support somewhere, constantly seeping out new diseases for the priests to harvest, or a poxwalker devoid of self, or outright dead and consigned to the corpse compost heap. By comparison, being a battered, secretly discontent cog in this machine is a mercy. Contented resignation, indeed. I think of how many times today I caught myself almost accepting that this is just life now. Sometimes I worry that by pretending to be content for so long, I've actually become so. But no, the moment I introspect like now, I know I haven't truly accepted it. There's still a spark of rebellion in me, however faint. I carefully peek through my door peephole to ensure no one is coming by. Paranoia, maybe. Then I kneel by my cot and slide a loose floor grate aside, another hiding spot of mine. From it, I take out a bundle. Unwrapping it reveals a small plasteel canister with a screw lid. Inside, cushioned by cloth, lies something precious, a tiny sliver of paper. An image, actually, and a data crystal. The image is a clipped corner from a larger poster, showing the Imperial Aquila and a few words. "The Emperor protects." Such slogans once plastered our transit stations. I kept this fragment like a talisman. The data crystal is blank now. I wiped it long ago. But it's a keepsake from my administratum days. I did clerical work as a scribe at one point. More importantly, etched on its side is the symbol of the Imperium and the year it was issued. Just seeing that clean Aquila and high Gothic script reminds me that this was all real, that the Imperium existed, that I wasn't born into this filth, that there was something before. It's dangerously seditious to have these, of course. If found, I'd be in for re-education at best, but I need them as anchors for my identity. I hold the paper scrap carefully. The printing is faded, but I can just make out the eyes of the Emperor on his throne, a part of his face from whatever art this came from. I wonder, does he see me? Does the God Emperor have any glimpse of souls like mine, stranded in this literal hell? The ecclesiarchy always taught he watches all of humanity. But if that's true, how does he judge what I've done to survive? By outward appearances, I'm a heretic now, a chaos worshipper. Never mind that in my heart I still denounce it. The Imperium wouldn't care. The Inquisition's purges spare very few, even among the unwilling tainted. They'd likely burn this whole place to ashes if they could, and everyone in it, including me. It's a harsh truth. My loyalty might never be recognized or rewarded. If the Emperor's forces returned, they might execute me alongside the cultists. That knowledge has settled in me like a cold stone. Yet I persist in loyalty, irrationally. Because it's who I am, I remain imperial in a place where that identity has no future, and could earn me death from either side. Why then? Why not just yield, truly convert, and ease my burden of secrecy? Many did. Some days I wonder if a part of me already half accepted Nurgle's embrace just to survive this long. After all, I haven't died of the diseases. Maybe that's only because I've been partially blessed, whether I wanted it or not. The fact I'm alive could mean Nurgle has claimed some piece of me. That's a disturbing thought I usually drown out. No, I resist conversion fully because if I surrender that last inch of myself, then everything that was me and mine, my family's memory, my ancestors' service to the Emperor, my old ideals, all that is truly gone. I would be nothing but another happy slave in the garden, praising the maggots eating me. I would rather live and die in quiet rebellion than lose that core. Even if the Emperor never hears me, even if no salvation comes. As I turn these thoughts, a distant rumble reverberates through the hive structure. The walls creak faintly. Could be a far-off explosion or thunder in the upper atmosphere. Not uncommon, sometimes war still touches our world's outskirts. Maybe some resistance trying a sabotage or a conflict between our overlords and an external foe. Hard to know, news is scarce unless it's a victory they want to announce. The rumble fades. In its wake, the hive's sounds return. A pipe hissing nearby, someone shuffling in the hall, a muffled scream. Pleasure or pain, hard to tell, echoing from a distant quarter of the hive night. I carefully pack away my mementos again and secure them. Then I lie down on the cot. The fungal mattress is damp but warm with my body heat from earlier. My muscles ache in that satisfying way after a full day. At least the body labored and did what it had to. Fatigue will grant me sleep, which is a small mercy. I stretch out, pulling a tattered blanket over myself. In the gloom, I allow one more indulgence. An honest thought uncensored in the privacy of my mind, addressed to the only hope I know. Holy Emperor, if somehow you can sense me, I'm still yours. I haven't forgotten. I haven't given up. The thought is both a prayer and a reassurance to myself. I'm still human. I will fight to remain human in this place. My eyelids grow heavy. I know my sleep will likely be uneasy. It often is. The warp taint on this world seeps into dreams. I might see the Garden of Nurgle again, a nightmare of bogs and mushrooms, where a jovial giant offers me a poisoned chalice. Or perhaps I'll relive memories of the fall. Occasionally, I have a bright dream of golden light, the Emperor's light, but those are rarer with each passing month here. Whether that's because Nurgle's influence blocks such dreams or my own hope wanes, I'm not sure. Tonight, a low-grade fever makes my slumber fitful. I drift in and out. At one point, I wake from a dream of drowning in the vat at work, algae filling my lungs as colleagues laughed to find my blanket has tangled around my neck. I gasp, sit up, gather myself. The hive is eerily silent now, save for the buzzing of a solitary fly that found its way into my room. It circles my head, drawn to the salt of my sweat, perhaps. I wave it away and lie back down. It lands on the wall near that painted Nurgle symbol and rubs its filthy little legs together. I swear it's watching me. "Go to your master," I mumble groggily at it, not loud enough to wake anyone beyond these thin walls. The fly takes off and disappears into the dark corner. Maybe it listened. I adjust my position, trying to find a dry spot on the bedding. Just as I'm about to drift off again, a distant sound comes to my ears, so faint I think it might be imagined, a deep, resonant laugh echoing through the metal bones of the hive. It's not human. It has a timbre like boulders grinding and a weird, jovial lilt. I've heard that sound only once before, during the worst of the invasion, when a greater demon of Nurgle manifested on the high spire to mock our futile defenses. The laugh of a great unclean one carrying across the city. Hearing it again, if it's real, means somewhere, perhaps up near the main temple, they've summoned one for some reason. Or it manifested on its own. If it's in my mind, well, that's just as unsettling. I hold my breath. The laugh fades. No one else in my hab block seems to stir. Either they're used to such phenomena, or they truly didn't hear. I slowly exhale. My heart thuds against my ribcage a few times before calming. There's a lingering mental echo of that laugh. I can almost imagine the demon's booming words. "How are you enjoying my garden, little mortal?" followed by a condescending pat on the head. I shake the thought away and pull the blanket tighter. Eventually, exhaustion claims me fully, and I descend into deeper sleep. If any dreams come, I don't recall them clearly. Perhaps just snatches. I find myself walking in a field of blooming flowers that on closer inspection are blooming tumors. I see a distant golden light, but it's swallowed by an encroaching mass of vines and flies. I hear a crying child and follow the sound only to find a withered corpse cradling a living infant made of mold. Nonsense of the subconscious. Then, mercifully, oblivion for a time. I awaken before the morning bell, an internal body clock still trained by years of dawn work calls. My chest hurts with each breath. Did I inhale some cauldron steam too deep? Possibly. I sit up and rub my eyes, crusty with discharge. Another day in paradise begins. Part of me wonders if one day I'll wake up and not know that I hate this existence, that I'll become like Joss or Mara, genuinely content, looking forward to fungus in my breakfast and a new boil to show off. The thought terrifies me more than any poxwalker or demon, because that would be the true death of me. So long as I can wake up and feel this revulsion, this quiet refusal in my soul, I know I'm still alive in the way it counts to me. I swallow, tasting blood from a bitten lip, maybe bit in a nightmare. I whisper so softly only I can hear. Another day. I'll get through today. It's both a mundane resolve and a prayer. There is no reply in the darkness except my own breathing and, faintly, the distant first toll of the plague bell signaling dawn. Outside my little window slit, the sickly light begins to creep back in. Soon I'll step out there again, don my mask of acceptance, and play my part among the rotting populace under the gaze of Nurgle's minions. I'll stir vats of filth, trade grim jokes with coworkers, bow my head in false reverence at the appropriate moments, all the while keeping that ember of who I was alive deep inside, sheltered from the foul winds that blow through this city. It's a precarious existence, but it's mine. A life of survival and identity carved out under the shadow of a chaos god. Disturbingly stable, monotonously horrific, simultaneously a community and a prison. I stand and roll my shoulders, feeling the stiffness and the little pops of painful bubbles under my skin from whatever infection is currently blossoming. I get dressed slowly, mentally bracing for the familiar gauntlet of the day. Before I leave, I take one last moment by the grimy shard of mirror on my wall. I see my face, pale, eyes a bit sunken, stubble patchy. A thin scar runs across my brow from an old accident, and a new boil is forming on my neck. Ah, there's the cauldron's parting gift. I meet my own gaze, and I mutter quietly, ironically, but also sincerely in its way. The Emperor protects. The old catchphrase tastes both sweet and bitter on my tongue, sweet in memory, bitter in reality. But I say it anyway. It's the closest thing to "have a nice day" that I give myself. Then I add with a dry, sardonic half-smile, glancing at the ugly fly rune on the wall, "Grandfather Nurgle provides." That part I say only so I can wear it as armor when I step outside. Hearing myself say it here, privately, in a mocking tone, helps me act it out earnestly later. I nod at my reflection, a little pep talk concluded, and turn toward the door. Time to join the world of the sick and the damned once again, to play my role in the grand play of decay. The heavy door swings open on creaking hinges, and the smells and sounds of the waking hive flood in at once. Another morning in the garden of Nurgle, another chance to endure, to pretend, to survive. With a deep breath of foul air and a steadying of my heart, I step forward into the corridor, joining my fellow citizens as we march toward another day of contented resignation in this festering paradise. And so it goes. Life continues amidst the rot, disturbingly normal, grimly stable. In the dark corners of my soul, I remain loyal to a distant emperor and yearn for a deliverance that may never come. But outwardly, I smile faintly and exchange pleasantries about the weather. Today's forecast, plague with a chance of acid rain, with a neighbor. I will work, I will eat, I will praise when required, and I will dream in secret of cleaner skies, until death or liberation finds me. This is my world. This is daily life on a chaos-infested planet ruled by Nurgle, a life of rot and ritual, of survival and irony, of despair and the stubborn spark of hope. And I will live it one day at a time, clinging to that spark, enduring until I can endure no more. Tomorrow will be the same. And strangely, that is both the horror and the comfort of it. In this diseased equilibrium, I persist, a lone, quiet witness to what was and what is, carrying an ember of the Imperium in my heart through the endless night of Nurgle's dominion. The plague bell tolls anew, and my day begins.